How can one single person be both a gentle lamb and a conquering lion? It sounds like a contradiction, right? Well, today, we're diving into one of the Bible's most complex books, Revelation, to try and make sense of it. We're going to do that by looking at the 17 different names it gives to its central figure, Jesus. And what these names show us is pretty fascinating.
So we're actually digging into a sermon that points out something incredible. Just in this one book, Jesus gets at least 17 distinct names or titles, and each one, as you're about to see, kind of unlocks a completely different side of who he is.
And what's so wild is just how much some of these names seem to clash. I mean, how can you describe the same person as a gentle, sacrificial lamb and also the fierce, conquering Lion of Judah? It just doesn't seem to add up. So what's the deal? How do you solve that puzzle? Well, the way this pastor breaks it down, it's not a contradiction at all. These different names were picked for very specific reasons, to show different parts of his character and his mission, each one tailored for a different group of people at a different point in time.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the name that shows up the most, and I mean by a lot. It appears over 28 times in Revelation, and that name is the Lamb. For believers, for the church, this name is super personal. This isn't the name of some distant, powerful king. No, this is the name of a caring shepherd, someone who redeems them, who protects them, like his own flock.
And the sermon points to this exact passage to show us why. See, the whole identity of the Lamb is tied directly to this idea of sacrifice, the idea that he purchased people for God with his blood.
So, you see, the big takeaway here is that for believers, the Lamb is an identity all about intimacy and care. He's their Redeemer, he's their shepherd, he's even their bridegroom. But that is definitely not his only identity in this book. All right, now let's completely switch gears. Because according to the sermon, when the audience shifts to the nation of Israel, well, a totally different set of names comes into play, and they paint a very, very different picture.
Yeah, forget the sacrificial lamb for a second. These names are all about power, about a royal bloodline. They don't present him as a savior who dies, but as a conquering king, the one they've been waiting for, the heir to King David's throne.
And this is where you really see that contrast laid out so clearly. The sermon frames this as a really intentional shift in roles. For the church, it's personal, it's spiritual, but for the nation of Israel, it's a political, prophetic role.
So the thinking here, according to the sermon, is that this identity, the lion and the root, is for a specific time in the future, a time of great trouble. He's prophesied to return then, not as a lamb, but as a triumphant king ready to deliver Israel.
But it doesn't stop there. The scope gets even bigger. So we've got the personal role for the church and the national one for Israel. But some names establish his ultimate authority over everyone, everywhere.
Okay, now think about these titles. Ruler of the kings of the earth, King of kings, the true one. I mean, they're on a whole other level. This isn't about a personal relationship anymore, or a promise to one nation. This is about absolute, universal power and perfect justice over the entire world. Now here's a really interesting one the sermon dives into, firstborn from the dead. You might think that just means he was the first person to ever be resurrected, but it's actually more specific than that. The key idea here is that he was the first to be brought back to life in a new, immortal body, one that would never ever die again, basically setting the pattern for others.
All right, so finally we get to the names that are, well, they're bigger than any one group of people. They're bigger than time itself. These are the titles that define his relationship to, well, all of existence.
And this is just a fantastic example of the sermon's main idea. Even these titles that sound so alike are apparently tailored perfectly. You've got Alpha and Omega, the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet, for the Greek-speaking world. You have the beginning and the end for a Hebrew audience, which echoes their own scriptures, and then the first and the last for literally all of creation. It's just a masterclass in knowing your audience. So when you put them all together, what do you get? You get a picture of someone who exists completely outside of our normal human limits. He's not just a figure in history, he is the framework for history itself, the beginning, the end, and everything that happens in between. So, after going through all these different identities, the lamb, the lion, the king, the beginning, and the end, it really leaves you with a pretty deep question. Just think about the people in your own life. Is your mom just mom, or is she also a daughter, a professional, a friend? Maybe, to really truly understand anyone, you have to know all of their names.